Okay, I'm back in Mike's basement now. Well, we'll call it Mike's garage. With a little bit further on the Subaru transmission breakdown. Last video, we split the cases. Now we're presented with the side view of the whole thing. It's nice. It splits open like a clamshell. You can work on everything here. Now, if you're doing the front differential, if you're doing the bearings or doing the adjustment, you want to make a note now before you take anything further apart, because this lower shaft, the what we could call the output shaft, has the front pinion gear in it. Now you can get, this is the last chance you have to get an idea of the backlash on the front ring and pinion gear before you go further taking it apart and lose it. You can now get a reference to that, so that you don't need any special measuring stuff. You get a feel for it. You can feel it the same when it's going back together. This is, like I said, still got the bolts in the back bearing. So that's holding this output shaft, or the pinion, solidly in place still. So you want to make sure that this bearing's still seated. You push down on the differential so it's perfectly seated in the other bearing here, and just get a feel for that little bit of play there. Just so that this shaft is still, you can see the pinion shaft sits still, and you can get that feel for the little bit of back and forth play you have there. And just get a feel for that, because that's what you want to achieve. I mean, like I said, if you're just taking a case apart to do some repairs and you're not doing anything with those final drive gears, then you don't have to worry about this. But if you're changing anything as in relation with the pinion or any of the bearings with this front diff, you're going to have to readjust it to make this this backlash, get this right back here. And you can get a feel for it just like that. You get that little feel of how much play it's got. And actually, you can adjust it before you put the whole thing back together. You can at least adjust that side bearing to get you exactly that. That way when you go back together with the whole case, all you have to do is crank this side down onto this bearing, and you already have your backlash set by the opposite side. But we know that. Now you can go ahead and take your, you can see, well, first I'll show you all the gears, depending on what you're trying to do here. Basically, they go in number order down the line, pretty much. You've got first gear here. You know, obviously the matching two. You got first gear here. This is reverse, which with a little extra shaft in the back and another gear to make it go the opposite direction. You got second, which this is the main flaw. Most of you Subaru trannies, when you brake, you're probably going to brake second, and this is a problem with this tranny. If you brake this gear, any other subsequent one, it's really not. You can just change that one, but it's second. If you brake this gear, that gear is part of this shaft. It's all one piece. This gear is cut directly into the shaft material. So if you brake second gear, you got to get a whole new input shaft. At second, you got third here. Fourth, which is pretty much one-to-one. You can tell the two gears are probably just about the same exact size. And fifth is actually on the outside of the case, exposed in the back when you take off the transfer case. Now you could take out the input shaft. All you got to deal with really is the. I'm trying to prop this up a little bit better so everybody can see. I don't know why it was fine before. Something's keeping it from sitting the way I want it to. That'll work. The tranny mount will hold it up a little bit. There we go. So you can take this top shaft out, and it just be a little delicate with it. This seal is kind of glued in. You got your front pinion seal here. There we go. Just don't want to twist it too much one way or the other because you might damage the plastics on the shift forks. You can take this out and just inspect everything. That bearing seems to be mint. And on the backs of these, this is very important going back together. You'll see there's a little pinhole in the bearing race. There's also a pin in the case. You gotta make sure that if you ever turn the case upside down when there's nothing in it, that those pins, you don't lose them, because it's very easy to just turn it upside down, not be paying attention, it hits the floor, you don't know it, and now you're missing a pin. Also, when you put the case back together, if you don't make sure that this bearing, because you put that in there, we'll just take this off here for a second. You put this bearing in here, it can spin, and then you can just get it to where all of a sudden you'll feel it kind of just pop into place. You know, you'll get it to where you can't spin it. So when you have the shaft and you're laying the shaft in here, you got to make sure you can get this to the point where it cannot spin and it can't move front to back either, because then you'll make sure that that pin is in there. If you start tightening the case down and that pin is not aligned with that hole, you're going to push that pin back through the case. You might actually crack the bearing also. Nope. We're not changing any of that. We're just swapping stuff, so I'm going to put that aside. And now we'll take the bolts out for the lower. I always like to take this one out second because it's a little bit heavier, and you also have to move it a bit to the side to get this other shift fork out. So those two there. Now we can pick up on this. And there we go. Again, this one, you don't want to lose it. Pay attention. You got your shims here that are specific to this, that hold that hold this lower shaft right into place exactly where it wants to be. So don't lose them. And also this one has the same thing. If you look at this front bearing, it also has a pinhole in it. You got to make sure that it aligns with that pinhole, with that pin as well when you're putting everything back together. Now, also, if you're doing a like an RA gear swap or something like that, you can go ahead and these shafts, you still, again, don't need any specialty tools really. You can just take this nut. It's got these little safety tabs on it, but if you just hit it with an impact gun, it'll twist it right off. And you should bend them back so that you'll be able to pop them back on. Same thing here with this big ass nut. This one is a little bit more difficult, but usually I knock them loose with a, I have this socket, but in a pinch, I've done it before with just a hammer and chisel. You get a little bite into this nut with a chisel and give it a good hit while it's laying on a block of wood, it'll come loose. And you could just do the same thing in reverse to get it back on. You don't need any special shit. There's just snap rings in here besides that holding it together. So you can do all your, and it's all got roller bearings, so there's really no other other shims other than what the factory's got in here for the entire shaft and the bearing itself. And it's the same thing with the input shaft has got the same deal, other than the front three gears really, which are integral to the shaft. You have to switch the whole shaft. Basically, this entire thing is on here, just a big nut. Just bang the nut off, and a couple of snap rings holding everything right in place. And that's about it with that. You got to be that one bearing that has the flange on it. Be very careful taking that on or off, because that is that's a very expensive bearing, and it's unique to Subaru. So you have to get it from the dealer or some other transmission company, a transmission rebuilder or something along those lines, because that's a very unique part. This differential just lifts out, And that's it. Pretty much completely done. The only thing holding these other rails in is there's roll pins in the forks. We're not taking those out, and I'm going to go ahead and move along to the next video, which is going to be the reinstall into the other transmission case. I'll see you guys next time.